Hello my friends, I hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to be talking about the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. Yep, they're at it again with another themed, scented eyeshadow palette. This one, yeah, it's got some pumpkin spice scent to it. I gotta say, I can recognize that. This is what the palette looks like on the inside. We've got that format of like the chocolate bar type palettes that they've put out. Of course, there have been other sort of holiday, fall, spicy themed palettes that we're gonna be comparing this one to, as well as some other palettes from other brands that I think kind of overlap with some of the themes in here. In this video, you can plan to see some swatches. I'll show you a tutorial on the look that I'm wearing right now. I'll also show you plenty of pictures of other looks that I've done with this palette, and again some comparisons to some other things. But what we've got in here are a lot of really rich mattes. If you look over kind of toward this side, you can see so many of these shades over here have not only a really nice color intensity, but they are matte. So we've got like matte dark brown, this matte kind of berry wine color down here, this really like true purple with a lot of blue in it. You know, it's not one of those purples that's getting on the real pinky side of things, but we do have like kind of a bold pink, a really rich orangey shade. Yes, I do know that is shimmer right there, but down this row, we've got a yellowish color that's really fun to work into the looks, sort of a terracotta brown, then a cooler kind of mauve shade. Other mattes, a peach right here, sort of a medium kind of very yellowy beige, and a very dusty pink. So there are some really nice choices made among the mattes here. Oh, this matte cream as well. So you could get definitely easily a full matte look, but with some interesting color pops. So I really like that that option is there. And then among the shimmers, it's basically, with the exception of this shade here, which isn't especially dark, it's like a really shiny pinky purple, but we've got a lot of pastels among the shimmers. So a light kind of murky green, like a soft olive there, a little bit brighter, more goldeny green, kind of flaky, but can be really pretty, sort of pressed into your eye look. The soft purple, a shiny pink, this one up here, more peachy with the shimmer and kind of like a little bit of a golden undertone in it. But some interesting choices of really light pops that can work in with the richness very, very well. So I use this palette and I've done quite a few different looks with it. I've saved them all to a certain photo album on my phone so I can go back to them. So yeah, the shades that have a little bit of shimmer, I feel like what I've noticed, especially with this look that you're seeing now that has like that real kind of greenish goldeny pop on the lid, that's using that fall leaf shade that I mentioned, could be a little flaky. What I've noticed about some of these shimmers is that they're capable of a really beautiful color payoff, but you may have to kind of experiment with using a stiff flat brush with those, or maybe using your finger. I feel like I've gotten the most satisfying color payoff and the most control over those shades when I just kind of pat them on with my finger. But if you're trying to do a real complex look, maybe that won't work for you as well. You know, if you're really trying to just pinpoint a small area or get kind of a real shape going with your eye look. My eye looks tend to really follow just the shape of my eye. I'm not always trying to create something really like unusual with it. But in a second, you'll see me describe how I went about this eye look, and I did do something kind of like this before. And something that does make this palette kind of unique is that they incorporated that bluish purple color. And that's kind of an essential part when you really start looking at nature and you look outside at what the sunset's doing. You know, you see a lot of blue and richness and depth in the sky actually, and that's a really pretty addition to sort of a sunset eye kind of look that you could do with this palette. I've also just kept it really basic and just worked with the mattes, the brownish mattes, the kind of yellowy tone in the pumpkin spice shade to blend things out. I've been very happy with that. I think Too Faced does a great job with their mattes, and it's nice to see so many of them in this palette and in some really pretty intense colors. One day I kind of made this color called Crisp right up here, this peachy shimmer, more of the focus kind of right in the center of the eye, and kept the look a little bit softer but with more of a bold liner. Also, what happens when you focus on maybe more of a berry thing happening in the outer crease, but a splash of some of the really light shimmer on the lid. I thought that made for a really pretty look, and instead of incorporating like all the orangey stuff, I kept it a little bit more rooted in the berry type colors. And And then I did a very earthy look, just incorporating that Falling For You shade. That's this really, really light kind of pistachio green there with some shimmer. That's a nice texture, by the way. It goes on very easily and smoothly, just with some of the more rich browns and kind of terracotta shades in the crease. So I would say the shimmers that you might find a little more need to really like pack on and very purposefully put on your lid. This one right here, this shade called Want a Piece of Me, that soft lilac, and these two over here. One is the pink and one is kind of like a goldeny looking greenish shade. But the other two shimmers right here, these are pretty smooth, a little bit softer, not quite so metallic looking. So before I really lay into exactly how I truly and deeply feel about this palette, I do want to show you the shadows in action, with the main focuses being how do those rich mattes go on, how do the mattes blend with one another and kind of build the foundation for the look, and also how I worked with one of the highly shimmery shades. So let's show you that. Alrighty friends, starting point for this look is going to be the shade called Fall For It. I'm using my Sigma U25 brush. This is kind of a medium peachy shade, and we're just going to use that to get things started in the crease. It's going to be a fairly warm look in that area, but we're also going to incorporate some cool into this look as well. But I feel like this is just a nice, soft, easy place to begin. And then as you start layering some deeper mattes on top of this, I find they all blend really easily. And then I'm going to go to the color called Spice Spice Baby right here. And this is a nice, warm, kind of like a terracotta brown. Getting that there in probably like the outer half of my crease. Blending right on top of that peachy shade we put in there. As you can see, we're just building on the depth and the warmth and the intensity level. So we're going to go to Ginger Spice right up here. So in comparison to what we just used, it's quite a bit more orangey. Definitely some red in this shade as well. And as you can see, we're further intensifying that outer corner. Now I'm going to take a second to just grab a bare brush and do a little blending around the outside. Just make sure our edges are nice and soft here. And we're going to actually take the shade called Pumpkin Spice, which has a lot of yellow in it. And I want to use some of that shade kind of on the border of everything happening here. Oops, goodbye hair. See how it's kind of becoming a bit more yellow as a result of using that shade right on the outside. I'm not trying to overlap the whole shebang here. Just on the outside of everything that's going on there. Once again, we blend. Let that soften up just a little bit. And I do believe I will take this color called Whipped Cream. Just a nice matte cream. And use that as my highlight. Are we using that space or what there? Yes, loving that. And I really took the Pumpkin Spice shade, really getting it right all over this area, okay? Making it be a border for all that pretty warmth. Now, when we're thinking of that kind of sunset eye type of look, I think we underestimate the amount of blue that can really be part of everything. It's not just all flat out orange and purple or whatever. Actually, kind of a bluish purple seems to be a big part of it. And that's why I really like that this color's in here. It's called Spice of Life, and it's a matte, really majorly blue infused purple. So I'm gonna pick some of that up. And I'm going to put this in my outer corner, and you may be surprised at how beautifully that pairs with the warmth that is in the crease currently. Like, it just looks so pretty when these come together on the eye. So don't just think of this shade as a means of like working in with the pinky or the purpley colors in the palette. Like, this can go toe to toe right in there with the warm stuff and really mimic what we see in the sky. Very natural combo, actually. Okay, so I'm patting that in there, but you'll also notice that I'm getting it into the crease. I don't want like a separation where the crease starts. I want it to kind of flow into some of my warm crease stuff. So then I'll take my E25 and we'll do a little blending here. And we'll let our sort of bluish purple mesh in with our warmth. And then there's one other shade here that can be really useful to us, and it is the color called Warm and Cozy. That's our pretty burgundy here. I love that they've given us so many rich shades as mattes in this palette. So Warm and Cozy, take that burgundy, I'm using just a small brush so I can get it exactly where I want it. This is from Profusion, it's the ES6. If you've ever wanted a small brush to tackle outer corners or to almost work like a pencil brush but have a little more flexibility than that, get this one. It's amazing. It's the most overlooked, I think, type of brush in a lot of brush lines that are out there. Kind of hard to find a brush like this. But I'm getting that right in the crease, and it's kind of the perfect union between the purpley shade and all the warmth. It just makes a nice little partnership there. Okay, now once again we blend. As that starts to sheer out a bit more, you'll really see it in action now. Boom, it's looking so good. I mean, that's really kind of what the landscape looks like with a sunset type eye, does it not? Got a little bit of yellow, you got some orange, you've got some real darkness, and also some blue. And I want to lose that blue there though, so I'm going to reinforce it. Spice of your life, what is it? Spice of life. Keep that in there. Going over it a little bit, going about mid-lid with it. And I promise we will use some kind of shimmer, although this could be a really pretty all matte eye. Loving the richness of these tones. It's just so satisfying. I think the color I want to pull in is this really cool kind of icy lilac right here called Want a Piece of Me. And I'm using this nice little kind of detail brush from Sigma. It's the E47. It's really nice around like inner corners. I'm just taking that shade and starting at the inner corner, pulling it up to my matte. May even use my finger with this, just because I feel like I've got a little more control and I can build up the intensity even faster. The first time I did a look with this shade, I think I let it get a little too watered down in the blending of my look. Like, it was still a pretty look, but I'm really even happier with it now that I went back and I really intensified that shade so much. Okay, getting that all patted on there. I might also take this PSL and Chill shade, which is more purpley, more of like a mid-tone purple, and kind of dab that over where these shades meet. That's kind of pretty. Some of the shimmers I do feel like have a little bit of a flake to them. You know, it's just they're trying to make them something really bold and just really metallic and stuff. So you got to watch out for that. You got to kind of be willing to experiment a little bit with how you put them on. But ultimately, I think there's some really pretty color combos in this palette. Next thing I'm going to do to sort of finish this look, I think I'll go back to Spice of My Life. I'm using that same small brush from Profusion that I used in my outer corner with the burgundy. And I'm just gonna, in a kind of sheer and soft way, apply that purpley shade right under here. And that is today's look with my pumpkin spice palette. So guys, this is how the look all came together. All I did was black liner straight across the upper lash line. I didn't wing it out or anything. I just kind of kept it real tight to the lash line. Put on some mascara. The other stuff on my skin face color-wise, I'm wearing the Cali Contour palette from Smashbox. So I've got these two shades on kind of as a contour slash bronzer. This is my blush. This is my highlight. And for my lip colors today, I actually combined these two shades from e.l.f. They're the sheer slick little skinny lipsticks. I've got on Golden Pear, which really mimics like this kind of shade that's sort of coming out from the eye. But then I decided to deepen it up just a little bit with Black Cherry, which is a really nice dupe for Clinique's Black Honey. So it kind of gave me that earthy sort of pumpkin-y lip here. Too Faced actually did come out with a pumpkin spice melted matte. I feel like this was a mini in a holiday set, maybe not last year, but the year before, perhaps. Like when they put out a set of mini melted mattes, I could have sworn there was one that was just like this. This is different from like Gingerbread Man. That was kind of the iconic one of the last couple of seasons. They had Gingerbread Man, Gingerbread Girl. Those were both like really rich, kind of brownish, reddish colors. This one, I'm pretty sure I was wearing it, yeah, in one of my first looks, and you can can see that it's got some reddish depth to it, but you can really pick up on the orangey quality as well. I think it's really pretty. The melted mattes last a really long time on me, and I don't think they're terribly uncomfortable. I think you just want to pay attention to the amount you're putting on your lips. Don't lay it on thick. There's no reason to. Just get the minimal amount you can get away with to get the lips all covered, and I think you'll find that even though it's a matte liquid lip color, it doesn't feel too terribly bad on the lips. But how do I actually feel about this thing? Well, it's a palette that I really, really like, and I start asking myself, well, why do I like it so much? Well, it's actually got a heck of a lot of similarities to something that I actually created. It was my choice to include a lot of those kinds of shades in a little something we call the Once palette here. So looking at some of the rich shades, like I look at the orange and the pink here, it's going toe to toe with this palette in a lot of ways because it's got a variety of depth, but also lighter pastel kind of pops to throw over some of it. So I would say a couple of key differences. You know, you've got warm in here, you've got cool, you've got some really nice dark shades, the wine color, you know, a deep plum. But a couple of key differences I would say are this one has this yellowy note in here, which is kind of important, I think, to the identity of the palette. And also this one down here, the purple, instead of just being a straight up dark plum like the Once palette has, a very traditional plum, this is like a real true bluish purple. You saw it being used in the eye look. You know, it's kind of different from the plums that we get in a lot of other palettes. But other than that, there's a lot of crossover between these two. So it's like, yes, it's a palette I love, but why do I love it? I look at other palettes in my collection that have some similarities and I'm like, oh, okay. I also found an interesting overlap with one of my favorite palettes from Viseart, the Neutral Mattes Malo. Look at the way those mattes are so similar here. I mean, right down to that matte kind of bluish shade. It's more true blue in this one, but they've got the pink, they've got all the warmth. If you're after this one mainly for the mattes and you've already got this, honey, you better just stick with this because they overlap so much. Even with the yellowish tone, I practically feel like they wanted to lay them one on top of the other, you know? A plum, a brown, lots of kind of mid-tone warmth happening. So the overlap with those two is just crazy to me. Then I also wanted to just point out here, if you're really being drawn in by like the light green and the light purple and some of those pastel pops, I also saw some similar themes in the Garden Variety palette from ColourPop. I'm not saying, hey, these two palettes are dupes for one another. I'm not saying any of this stuff is a total dupe. I'm just noting what some similarities are. And here I thought they really spun off of like shimmery purples and this green, gold. What you don't have in Garden Variety is a lot of this glaring warmth right over here that Pumpkin Spice has. But, you know, it kind of depends on what's drawing you in. Are you more drawn to this because of the ColourPops? If you are, no pun intended, but you might go for the ColourPop palette that is really playing off those tones a lot. Or you might already have this and that's just something to think about. Also, you probably want to see what's happening with the Faced Gingerbread and the Gingerbread Extra Spicy. At first, I was just kind of thinking back to my memory before I actually opened this up. I was just kind of assuming there would be a lot more overlap. I don't really think there's that much overlap. I mean, one thing we can see for sure is that there's a bold pink and a bold orange shade in there, but this one falls back with its depth into more of the traditional plummy colors, like this shade right here. Reindeer Paw is a really dark brown, but we've got sort of dusty plum, if not flat out true plummy shades, also some golds that this one's falling back into. This one with its light pops, they're a little more unique, a little more varied in those different pastels, and then instead of going back to just a plum, there's different things happening with the dark mattes over here. Okay, here's Gingerbread Original, Gingerbread Extra Spicy. I've already done a video comparing these two, but the Extra Spicy, as you can see, more warmth among those mattes. A lot of opportunities to take that into kind of an orangey, peachy sort of place. And it's really, to me, it seems like a bit more of a monochromatic palette, with the exception of this little wild card oddball down here. You know, everything kind of stays peachy, bronzy, golden, and rooted in deep pinks and terracottas and warm browns. Here, as I pointed out, you're going to be prone to maybe doing a lot of looks that incorporate some plum or maybe some pink, but this one, much more uniqueness in the light shimmers that are provided and a little more variety in the dark mattes as well. So I would say if I had to pick one palette out of these three kind of fall themed or holiday time kind of Too Faced palettes, I think the pumpkin spice is the most appealing one. But like I showed you in those comparisons to the Once palette, to Garden Variety, to the Viseart palette, there's some overlap there. If you have the Once palette and those minor differences that I pointed out aren't a big deal to you, you could maybe stay in that zone and get a lot of similar looks to what I've done with the pumpkin spice palette. You guys know I'm not trying to come up with like all kinds of ways to plug my own palette. It's been out for a while. If you want it, you've probably gotten it by now. Like, no big deal. If you don't want it or don't like it, I'm not offended. But it's just kind of clear to see how some of the light pops are very similar to that one, and some of the richness is also something you can achieve with that palette. It's just this has kind of this unique bluish sort of purpley quality that I did spotlight in my tutorial. Also this yellowish shade. That's a really fun color to work into a look, I find. If you're one who does not like to deal with any flake in your shimmers, that's another thing you will most definitely encounter with a few of these, as I pointed out. A finger application can keep them pretty well contained and give them a fairly opaque look on the eyes, but if you just like to stick straight to your brushes and not have to mess or experiment, I could see them being a little bit frustrating. But in my opinion, from Too Faced, it's probably one of their more interesting color stories that they've put out in a palette in a while, and it shouldn't be a surprise to hear that coming from me because, like I said, it had so many similarities to the Once palette, and that palette was kind of my heart and soul put into a palette. So guys, I hope this was a helpful video to you if you're trying to wrap your head around this pumpkin spice palette from Too Faced. If you've tried it, let me know how it's working out for you or what comparisons maybe you found within your own collection to that palette. There may be more that I have that I'm not really thinking about, but these were just the things that I was quickly able to grab and be like, oh yeah, I see the similarities, or I see a little crossover there. So thank you so much again, and I will see you soon. Bye.